Today, I want to share with you 3 people who have influenced me the most when it comes to my faith and to some degree, creativity. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jonathan. I'm so glad you're here. If you're here for the first time, this is a place where I love to talk about creativity, entrepreneurship, and faith, and how all 3 of those things work together. So if you're interested in one of those things, or maybe even all 3 of those things, then I think you'll find some things here that could be helpful and valuable to you. It's really hard for me to narrow down my influences to 3 people when I think about my faith, because I have a lot of influences, a lot of fathers of the faith, so to speak. Men and women who I've read, who I've listened to, who have really encouraged me and sharpened me in what I believe and what I think about God and what I think about Jesus and what I think about the world and myself. My faith really penetrates how I think about everything. I see everything in my life through the lens of what I believe about God. And so it's a really important thing. I wanted to share with you where I'm getting some of the thoughts that I have. If you have paid attention to this channel at all, then you know that this channel is named after one of my favorite books called Every Good Endeavor, and it's written by Tim Keller, and it has super influenced my thoughts on faith, my thoughts on work, and my thoughts on creativity. I'm going to go ahead and leave that out. That's just like a bonus for you. I'm going to leave that out just because I've already talked about it, but I wanted to share with you 3 more people who have super influenced my faith, and I actually have a bonus final 4th person that I wanted to mention to you because I just couldn't narrow it down to 3. So you're actually getting 4 today. The first person I want to mention is a guy that you might be familiar with. You probably are familiar with him, and it's C.S. Lewis. He's most known for his books, The Chronicles of Narnia, and I love C.S. Lewis. I've read lots of things by C.S. Lewis. I do like The Chronicles of Narnia, but it's by far not anywhere close to my favorite thing that he's written. I really love his books, Reflections on the Psalms. I've read that many times and I love it. And I love some of his fiction books. The Great Divorce is really wonderful. Screwtape Letters is one of the first books I read of his. And I really love C.S. Lewis a lot because I love the fact that he kind of unites. He's one of the first that I've seen to really unite his faith with his creative energies, his creative endeavors. He thinks and talks about his faith a lot. He was very apologetic in the way that he wrote and communicated, and had that leaning in him to really be upfront about his faith, even though he was someone who was deeply compelled to create things, create a lot of fiction stories, a lot of kids' stories. And I just really loved that about him, and I felt like it was really unique, and it's something that I hadn't encountered or seen, and even still to this day, you just don't see a lot of blending of people who think deeply about what they believe and people who also love to put their creative efforts out into the world, who love to do creative things, who love to tell creative stories, for example. And so C.S. Lewis has been really impactful to me. I encourage you to go and check out some of those books I mentioned if you haven't yet. Don't just read The Chronicles of Narnia. If you do, you're missing out on a lot of great C.S. Lewis. So go check out some of those other books, and we'll move on to the second person. The second person is Charles Spurgeon. He is wonderful. Every morning, my devotion time, I end up reading some Charles Spurgeon. He has this series called The Treasuries of David, or Treasury of David, and basically he writes like 2 or 3 pages for each verse in the Psalms, if you can imagine. It's a lot, but it's so wonderful and it's so helpful. And when it comes to devotional time or reading my Bible, doing devotions, I'm not really good at picking up, a structured devotion that someone has laid out for me. I really kind of like making my own plan. And whenever I was a teenager, I heard someone talk about how it's helpful to read a psalm a day, read a proverb a day, read an Old Testament passage a day, and read a New Testament passage a day, which sounds like a lot, but it can go really fast. And I don't always do exactly that, but that's kind of the template that I follow. And so every day I am in a psalm, and typically what I do is I laser focus on one verse in the psalm, and then I open up Charles Spurgeon and I read what he has to say about that psalm, and it's always really helpful. And another thing I love about the Treasury of David is that not only does he have his commentary on that individual verse of the psalm, but he oftentimes also quotes several other pastors and theologians who have amazing thoughts on that psalm as well. And so I not only get his thoughts, but I get their thoughts. And I've thought for a long time, this is just like a sidebar thing, that pastors are very creative. I mean, they have to write a lot. Spurgeon wrote a ton of wonderful things. And as a creative person who is also deeply invested in my faith, I tend to get very inspired by pastors and theologians because they're really good at drawing out beautiful language and really good metaphors to help people better understand what Scripture is saying. Especially old pastors and old writers like Spurgeon tend to use really beautiful, poetic, flowery language that I just really love and really inspires me as a creative and has helped me write a lot of songs and create a lot of my own writing. And so Charles Spurgeon is definitely someone who has impacted my faith a lot and also inspired me creatively just a ton. So Treasury of David is something you should check out. Again, it's massive. I have it on Kindle. It's not something you're going to just sit down and read. It's really just more of a companion to your reading through the Psalms. But a lot of Spurgeon's sermons are also printed. And so I tend to sometimes just pick up sermons of his and read them because they are really beautiful and really helpful and really wonderful in helping me understand the Word of God more and understand who God is more. And so I just highly recommend you start looking into Charles Spurgeon because he's been a real help to me. The third person I'm going to mention today is a guy by the name of Martin Lloyd-Jones. And one of the things I love about Martin Lloyd-Jones is that he was a doctor before he became a preacher and a writer. And I think that his perspective as a former doctor is really helpful because he's really good at connecting spiritual things of our faith to very practical things like our mental health and our bodies. And one of my favorite books of his is a book called Spiritual Depression, which has been really helpful to me at different points in my life, and it's been really helpful to my wife as well. And so I highly recommend that you check out Spiritual Depression. He has a lot to say about mental health and how that works with our faith. Another thing of his that I've loved is he has a great sermon series of the Sermon on the Mount, where he walks through the Sermon of the Mount, and he preached through that and offers a lot of really great, insightful commentary on the words of Jesus as he preached the Sermon on the Mount. And so those are two things that I can think of. I've read a lot of his, but he has just been really helpful to me and really shaped the way that I think about God and has just impacted my faith. The fourth bonus person that I want to mention to you is someone that I'm just recently starting to really read. And I found this person through C.S. Lewis and through some of the writings of Tim Keller. He quotes this person in his book, Every Good Endeavor, a lot. And that person is a lady by the name of Dorothy Sayers. I've been reading her work a lot recently. A book that I am almost finished with is this amazing book called The Mind of the Maker. It's wonderful. It helps us think about God as a creative being, as the creator, and also helps us just boil down what that means for us as creative people. There are a lot of insightful, thought-provoking things in this book that I'm still processing. I hope to talk more about some of the things she talks about in this book later on this channel. Highly recommend it. I've also read a little bit of this book, Letters to a Diminished Church. It's really good. I had to make myself stop reading this book because I needed to focus on finishing The Mind of the Maker first, but I'm excited to dive deeper into Letters to a Diminished Church. I love Dorothy Sayers. I love the way she thinks. She reminds me a lot of C.S. Lewis, both in her writing style, but mostly in how she applies logic to how she thinks about God, how she thinks about creativity. And I've just been really enjoying diving into her writings and learning from her. And so I thought I would share her with you because I think she would be someone worth you checking out as well, and she's definitely been influencing my faith a lot recently. Again, I could mention a whole list of people who have greatly influenced my faith over the years, but those are the top 3, 4, 5 people who I just wanted to share with you today. I thought you might know some of them, but maybe not all of them, and if you want to know kind of more of who is impacting me and who is impacting the thoughts that I'm producing on this channel, then you can't go wrong with picking up some of these resources. I think they can be beneficial to you in helping you grow in your faith, but I also think if you pick up some of the books and some of the resources by these people that I've mentioned to you today, that they can also help you think better about your creativity and think about your creativity more in light of your faith. So I very much encourage you to go and check at least one of them out. If you're willing, I'd love to know some people that have really impacted your faith. Drop them in the comments below. Drop some books, some resources, some names of people that have been really helpful to you. I would love to check them out. So let me know in the comments below. But yeah, that's all I have for you today, and I'll see you in the next video.